Welcome to the For the Love of the Game podcast on a special Thanksgiving edition. Black Friday
Yeah,
edition of For the Love of the Game podcast with your host, Jefferson Belfort and Brian Hernandez. How are you doing, Brian?
man, doing good. I'm feeling a little bit sick, so you might be able to hear that I am a little bit sick, but power on. Like I said before, like we're not canceling episodes unless it's something very special. And especially, you know, yesterday we weren't able to record at a normal time, but today we got the better lighting because it's day out on a Friday. I'm really excited. Thanksgiving was good and all. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm energized, like you said. Got my belly full from Thanksgiving, giving me the energy to do this pod for today. So I'm ready to go and wanted to wish our listeners, a happy Thanksgiving, and we're heading into this holiday season, safe and great holidays.
I
And
agree.
some of the topics that we're going to hit today are the Suns and their amazing win streak that they're currently on, the Isaiah Stewart and LeBron James situation going on currently. And then Luke Walton and his recent firing from the Kings and how that changed the landscape of that organization. And then lastly, our boy Giannis and some funny things that he's getting into lately.
I
You
love
ready,
it.
Brian?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, perfect. So let's land on with the Phoenix Suns. Um, you know, First we got to mention Warriors are 16-2, and
Yes.
they're blowing the league away of how good they're playing. They've crossed every check mark out there in this beginning half of the season. But because of that, we're taking a back seat to looking at what the Suns are doing as they're on an incredible 14 games and counting at this moment winning
Yes.
streak. I know they played the Knicks tonight, and then they play the Nets tomorrow. So we'll see if this winning streak keeps on going, which will be impressive if they do. But
Yeah.
let's go get a little bit into it, Brian. What are you thinking about the Phoenix Suns currently?
Man, the Phoenix Suns. I feel like this kind of happens a decent amount with teams that make the finals. We see when a team makes the finals, they're generally start getting a little bit underhyped because we expect so much from them, and also a lot of people were I heard saying over the summer that it was a fluke. The Lakers should have been there, or the Nuggets should have been there, and like a bunch of other teams. Everyone was kind of saying that this is a fluke, and so far we've been seeing the Phoenix Suns. They are no fluke. They're only getting better. They're only improving, and all these. I said in a previous pod, I expect them to get better because last season their team were all young guys, and having that playoff experience, and now coming in with a full season of an off season to be able to get better, work on their games. Look at the damage that they're doing. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's simply incredible some of the things that they're doing in this early half of the season. They're still getting at it in a team oriented way. It's not really clear cut superstars. I do think that they do have two superstars, but some people may regard them a little bit differently
Yeah.
because it's not consistent to what we see off of other superstar teams. They have four guys that are really like putting them on the map. With DeAndre Ayton having a good year, trying to prove he deserves that contract. You take a look at also Chris Paul. He's leading the league in assists currently. Devin Booker is being Devin Booker, and then Mikal Bridges is proven that they made the right decision in giving him that contract. And because of that, you're just seeing the byproducts of that, and other pieces that are just falling into places. How Crowder is still defensive oriented and helping out their organization in that sense. Cam Cam Johnson still playing a big role as role player, and then factoring in now Landry Shamet into that is another good role player that they have coming off the bench, and then JaVale McGee is another guy I think rounds off what they're doing and showing just how impressive this first half of the season that they've taken.
Yeah, I think JaVale McGee's definitely been one of the sneakiest signings this offseason. Because, especially, I mean, he was a huge part of the Lakers run when they won the championship. And then just seeing him over the years, after like the Shaq and the Fool, you hear Shaq screaming, JaVale McGee, and all this other stuff. Like, he gets kind of touted as a not as good of his player as he doesn't get the respect he deserves. And so far, I mean, well, he's averaging 16 minutes a game. He's having 10 points, 7 rebounds off the bench. Like, what more do you want from a player? So that was an amazing signing because we saw them last season when DeAndre Ayton wasn't on the floor. You had like Frank Kaminsky out there, and that was just kind of wasn't working as well. So having JaVale McGee, really huge. Something that I guess we kind of knew the Phoenix Suns were a good defensive team, but we didn't know that they were this good defensively because right now they're ranked the sixth best offense and the 4th best defense right now. And especially from last season, they were actually the 6th, so they were still good, but they're making that jump a little bit. And it's extremely impressive to see. Chris Paul, he's older. Everyone's expecting his downfall one of these days, but he's just showing, man. This guy can't be stopped. Father Time, so far, he's not coming for Chris Paul.
Exactly. And then, I wanted to add is on Twitter, Kurt Goldsberry, he always posts these efficiency landscapes where he breaks down the net ratings. And, there's 4 teams that are in his area of the quadrant of wow, which is first, you have the Warriors, then you have the Nets also there, and you have the Jazz on there. But the second best in net rating is the Suns in the last 15 games. The Suns ranking at 7, a little bit off from what the whole year landscape is. But they're 7th in offense, 2nd in defense, netting them the second best rating. So it's interesting to see their team, like just continuing what they've been doing last year, and then just go into a few other stats that just pop out for these guys. Is their 3rd net rating in points, their 6th net rating in blocks, their 2nd net rating in assists, and then their 6th in free throw percentage. So there's a bunch of things that these guys are doing that just proves like they're here to play ball. And they're here to be in that conversation with being the top team in the West. And that led me into why we started having this conversation is why do you think long-term people are not considering the Suns team to be one of those teams that make it even to the Western Conference final?
I think it's I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier of right now we see the Suns having an amazing start, but in the same exact conference, there's another team having even a better start in the Warriors, and they're missing Klay Thompson. They're not even fully healthy, and there's just so much potential. Steph Curry is doing some amazing Steph Curry things. I think I saw, was it yesterday? He's just like dancing all over the court, just throwing up threes, making it, and like this man, it's or not yesterday, but on Wednesday, he's just next level. So I think there's just so much hype around Golden State. And then as well, Utah's not too far off. As I said, that Phoenix was the sixth best offense and then the 4th best defense. Utah is actually the best offense in the NBA, and they're the 8th best defense. So they're right there as well. And there's just so many hurdles that the Phoenix Suns have to get through in the West. You got, of course, I mean, people are still hoping that the Lakers can come back and make an improvement by the end of the season, but I think no matter where the Phoenix Suns actually match, they're gonna have a pretty tough assignment on whoever they verse. What do you think about why people are maybe downplaying the Phoenix Suns?
Then yeah, it goes back to what you were saying as well, is like that shadow that the Warriors are casting on the whole league, not just
Yeah.
the Suns right now with how dominant they've looked. They even in games where they've lost, they've been in it. In the games that they have won, it's usually either an an absolute thrashing of the other team, or it's a come from behind win. I saw a stat where they said the Warriors have had 6 games where they were down by 10 plus, and they won those games. And the rest of the league's percentage on that was 24% of those games they would win, while the Warriors are 100% for those games. That's just insane to hear and think. And because of that, they're giving a blind eye to what the Suns are doing. But I think this is feeding right into the Suns' hands because their leader, Chris Paul, has shown in every series that he's had or he's been a part of where we're considering the Warriors. He's truly a guy that is not scared of what the Warriors have. He was in 2018 a back injury, or I believe it was a hamstring injury, away from beating a KD, Steph Curry, Klay Thomas led Warriors. So the guy's just not going to back down and say, "Hey, you know what? The Warriors are back to being the Warriors. I don't think we really have a chance at this." So he's gonna stand out and show the best. He's the best at
Yeah.
what he does at the point guard position. And then, granted, obviously, I don't think that I say that I don't think that he's the better point guard than Steph Curry currently, but I do think that he has a different type of leadership role than Steph Curry has, which is the reason why the Suns are where they are currently. And these guys really do play hard for him. It's like he's a coach, honestly.
Yeah.
But they all come to play. They all play through him, and he's just an integral part of the team. And he's not flashy. That's another reason why I don't think they're not on your Sports Center every day talking about how great um, his 40 points, 50 points, 30 points, 15 assists type games. He's not doing that, but he's every game putting out an effort that leads to them winning.
Yeah, Chris Paul is pretty next level. The one problem with Chris Paul, as you mentioned, in 2018, he was just a little bit an injury away. He kind of at the what it seems like almost every playoffs, Chris Paul gets injured. Even last season, he was battling injuries the entire finals. He gets banged up a lot. Maybe it's because of it. So I'm sure part of it's age, but at the same time too, just a smaller guy out there with bigger guys, and he's gonna get banged up. It's tough to see that, but I love what you brought up about he kind of impacts the team in a different way, just because of you can't see the little intangibles that he does of how good he is as a leader. Because we see on every single team that Chris Paul goes to, they all exponentially, all the players around him get better. Look what happened when he went to OKC. People were expecting OKC to be terrible, and yet they were kind of a surprise, and they were doing pretty decently well in the playoffs. And they had a lot of their players just blow up that year. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, they had he's just such a great leader. And then looking at him move to the Phoenix Suns, they weren't really a great team before Chris Paul actually got there. And I actually feel like if Chris Paul wasn't on the Suns last season, I'd probably say Monty Williams 100% gets Coach of the Year. But I feel like it's tough when you have Chris Paul there as well, because I feel like a lot of that credit also goes to Chris Paul himself and not just the coach. because of how good of a leader he is. Something I thought was pretty interesting about the Phoenix Suns, and maybe a reason why they're actually not getting as much hype, is because looking at their wins or looking at their roster, or not the roster, their schedule, it's actually not as tough as you might think. It's actually been a pretty decently easy schedule of the teams that they versed. I mean, they started off were pretty rocky, a 1-3 start. They lost to Denver. They had a win against the Lakers, a loss to Portland, who's been struggling, a loss to Sacramento, who's been struggling, and they started 1-3. And then after that, that's when they started to get a ton of wins. But again, those teams that they're beating, Cleveland, the Pelicans, Houston, Sacramento, Portland again, Memphis, they're middle of the road. Houston, Minnesota, San Antonio, Cleveland. These are all the teams that they've been versing recently. So I'm sure, I'm sure, we all know Phoenix Suns, they're legit. It's just that I'm sure if they're beating, Golden State, if they're beating Brooklyn, let's see how they do. I actually kind of expect them to beat New York today, but we'll see how that happens as well. Like, I want to see them beat bigger contenders, and because so far, I guess their biggest win at this whole entire time, and teams that are actually doing decently well, Dallas, they beat twice back to back. Other than that, Denver has kind of been struggling. They've been having a lot of injuries and still missing Jamal Murray, so that they're not 100% healthy. And then after that, Atlanta, who's also been struggling. Other than those guys, they really haven't beaten top talent so far.
Yeah, I kind of want to push back on that a little bit.
Okay.
There's a lot of conversation with now between them and the Nets a little bit. You hear too, kind of a strength of schedule type of conversation going on, where the Nets haven't lost to a team that's under 500, but they have a rocky record against teams that are over 500. I think those things work themselves out.
Yeah, for sure.
For both teams. But you still got to appreciate what they were able to do, because that is still an NBA team on the other side of the court. My thing is, I don't think you're trying to minimize what they've done,
Sure, yeah.
but I'm sure there are sports pundits that are trying to do that. 15 games, no matter the competition, in my mind, is a lot of games to string along. 14 games are a lot of games to string along into a win streak. So yes, there's going to be a real test for them this weekend. I know you don't think the Knicks will win, but I think they give them a real fight, and maybe they'll chalk up a win. But even if they lose these next two games, are they go 1-1 in these two games? I don't think it changes perception for me about the Suns and where they are currently.
No, I definitely. I'm glad you actually put that emphasis on there, and because I agree with you 100%. At the end of the day, no matter who you verse, that's who you got to play against. Everyone has to play these teams eventually. So it's definitely very important to get these wins, and this is actually a big reason why I'm a little bit lower on the Knicks recently, because they actually had a pretty easy start. It's just they weren't getting those wins that you're supposed to win. And that's why I'm pretty down on them. But, Phoenix is doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So definitely excited to see how they progress going forward. Do they keep this up for the rest of the season? Does Golden State keep it up for the rest of the season? And how this conversation plays as time progresses.
I agree. All right, so that leads us into our next conversation about last Sunday. The Lakers and the Pistons were playing midway through the third quarter. Jeremy Grant was shooting some free throws, and there was a little tussle for control of the ball on a made free throw, where LeBron James, quote unquote, inadvertently hit Isaiah Stewart in the face. The conversation looked very pedestrian at first. It looked like there wasn't going to be much coming of it. Probably a couple pushing like we always see in the NBA nowadays. But it escalated into something bigger than that when Isaiah Stewart started to realize that blood was running through his head, running down his head and across his lip. So that led to what we have seen now, the suspension of Isaiah Stewart of 2 games and LeBron James of 1 game. I believe Isaiah Stewart is safe to come back. LeBron already played a game already. So what are you making of this, Brian?
It's I think this is actually kind of comparable to one of the conversations we had in the past with Jokic and Markieff Morris. There was like a dirty that one was actually seemed more I'd say like he did it on purpose. Markieff Morris, he was trying to do a very hard foul. Now, we saw Jokic get mad, and I think we talked about on here that, like, yes, I think Jokic was he was in the right of trying to attack Markieff Morris. In this situation with LeBron, it seemed he was really trying to throw that elbow. Was he trying to hit him in the face? I'm not exactly sure. As watching the footage over again, Isaiah Stewart's face was very close to LeBron's body and just directly in the path of that elbow. But it's very tough. I think Isaiah Stewart is actually in the right to at least be upset. Maybe not to the extent that he started bowling over and tackling over a lot of his teammates and coaches and all that other stuff, security. Because it's actually pretty funny. So a lot of players in the past, even Rudy Gobert, I think, said it this season, of like, come on, man. We all know as soon as we start fighting, within 2 seconds, we're going to have like 50 people on us just holding us back. So you're not going to fight. You going crazy, like you're never actually going to fight on the NBA court. You're not going to have enough time. Maybe get 1 punch in or something like that, but that's about it. So that was a little extra. I want to get your thoughts before I go any further.
All right. I think first I'll say that I think that the suspensions were appropriate. The amount as well too, for both players. Because I think, given that both of them, for different reasons, caused for the situation to be what it was why they got the first. And then the second game, why Stewart got, it's because he incited something that was never going to happen if you didn't take it that far. So that definitely was warranted in my mind. One thing I will say is, which has been funny to see over this week, is just like sport pundits that haven't been watching Pistons games clearly start to talk about Isaiah Stewart's not about that, or he's not like that, or it just seemed they did not get a real essence of who Isaiah Stewart is. Isaiah Stewart just as likely could have been on the other side of being the one giving the elbow. I remember last year, and this year too, he had his own beefs with Blake Griffin, where last year he caught an elbow from Blake, so he gave it right back and was ejected for that. This year, he pushed him to the ground, and we all see the infamous meme now that's all across Instagram and Twitter. I won't describe that one. It's it's a little bit more than PG than we could talk about right now. So I'll leave that to be what it is. But he's the guy is not afraid of anyone. I've seen him push around Giannis last year, and Giannis and his brother went up to him and was trying to confront him about his actions. So the guy's really not scared of anyone in the league. And that's what led me to thinking, hey, you know what? Like, yes, LeBron was trying to apologize to him, but Isaiah Stewart is not the type of guy that wants to hear an apology. He's definitely is that type of guy that wants to, that kind of has, that anger that he brings to his game that makes him the player that he is, honestly. And the best player that he possibly could be is having that chip, that anger with him that he plays with. But in this instance, he did take it too far. When you're jeopardizing your own teammates' safety because you can't control yourself, that is a problem. Granted, and I don't advocate violence, but it was interesting to see and watch it real time as I was watching that game real time. Him just bulldozing everyone trying to get to the Lakers players, and good to see the Lakers have LeBron's back. Obviously, you knew they would, but I think that could really be something that helps with their chemistry, helps them with their camaraderie as well as a team, knowing that we all got each other's back. We know that despite a man going crazy, we're not going to back down to him coming at our best player on the team. So I think everything fell into place where it needed to be.
Yeah, I like to see how that. I like that you brought that up. Of this could actually affect the Lakers in a positive way going forward in terms of chemistry. What I do actually want to see is, or not that I didn't want to see, I actually want to bring up. So LeBron talked about this instance after the fact, and he actually said like, "Oh, I don't believe I should have been suspended." And all this other stuff. And he was talking about what he was trying to do. Stewart was on him. And what he thought he was going to swing his arm and smack his arm away when they were boxing out for the rebound. And Stewart's face was just too close. And then he hit him over the face. And then he was trying to apologize to him. As if you watch the footage, it did seem like LeBron was kind of like reaching out to apologize. And that's when this whole thing blew up. Now, with that being said, I think no matter even if he wasn't actually trying to hit him in the face and all that, if it wasn't on purpose, I think he should still get suspended for it, because at the end of the day, he still hit him over the face. He still cut his eye up, busted his lip, and all that, and it was pretty gruesome. And I think so. Like you're saying, I actually agree with you in the sense of I think the punishment was fair. It actually just was interesting to see LeBron was actually on the side of like, no, it's not fair, and I'm not a dirty player.
Well, this is the interesting part about that is, it's not about, no one could really truly measure intent. We're not in LeBron's brain, right?
Exactly.
So we can only go off of what footage is showing. If I showed this to a non-NBA fan, the footage is damning. It shows a guy that turns looks, and recoils and pops someone in the face. So I hear where LeBron is coming from. There's nothing wrong with him saying that he's not a dirty player, but to think that only dirty players are the only people that perform dirty plays is where the issue is. Yeah. And anyone is capable of performing a dirty play. It just happened to be that this time it was LeBron James that performed a dirty play.
Did you, by chance, so after LeBron said all this and people are talking about, is LeBron a dirty player or not? People on Reddit went crazy. They started pulling every single clip that LeBron has ever done that was a dirty play. Did you get a chance to see that clip at all?
I did see a little bit of it. I still think that if you pull up a lot of players and isolate them like that, you will see that there's a lot of plays where they get away with stuff. And when I say players, I am really speaking more to superstars that get away with doing a little bit extra. So and then being that he was superstar of all superstars at the time, you know, he definitely got away with a little bit more. So I could pull up the same thing, do the same thing with Shaq. I could do the same thing with Kobe. There's a lot of plays you could go back and say, oh, this guy was dirty for doing this, or so to speak, say that they're a dirty player. I just think that in the grand scheme of it, I don't think that LeBron does go into a lot of the games with intent. But I've seen guys that I know that go into a lot of games that I know that come with intent. Draymond has done a fabulous job with removing that moniker from his name, because he was a guy that had that label. And for some time now, you don't regard him as that same player. He's matured, obviously. That's led to that as well. But you could do that with anyone, I think, in my mind.
It's I like what you brought up before of you don't have to be a dirty player to do dirty plays. And for the listeners, a lot of the plays were like Steph Curry dribbling the ball and LeBron's trying to kick his ankles and like and then people going up for layups and LeBron like pushing people when they're in the middle of the air and stuff like that. Which, like you say, how long has LeBron's career been? Like I'm sure you can pull up so many more clips of him just doing stuff like that. So I thought that was a really good point. Yeah.
I'll add to that too. I remember seeing a play earlier this year where I just don't remember who the Bucks were playing, but someone got injured and Giannis proceeded to push them down on the ground. Like, so, and I've seen plays where you isolate it too. Giannis does similar things.
Yeah.
But when I go to the length of saying he's a dirty player, no. I just know that there's sometimes he will do a dirty play.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing of like, a lot of times these guys are just trying to get a competitive edge and they can do these little things and a little nudge and this and that. And sometimes they come off and you see them, they're actually a lot more than just a little nudge or anything like that. But like you said, I nicely put, you don't have to be a dirty player to do a dirty play. So like you said, like Giannis definitely, there's plenty of guys. There's almost every player in the NBA has done some type of play like that, where they've done something. Or if you want to even call it something this like a dirty play of like fouling somebody and then complaining like, no, it wasn't, or the ball's the other way. Like there's all these little things that people do. Just try to get a little competitive edge. And that's what we see. So it was pretty crazy of what actually went down against Stewart and LeBron, but happy to see they're both okay, and at least these guys aren't going to miss too many games.
And they're going to play pretty soon again. Actually,
yes,
so we'll see how that goes.
All right,
I guess that leads us into that leads us into our next topic, which is recently, I believe that this was within the week as well too. Luke Walton was fired from his job from being the Sacramento Kings head coach. He was heading into his third season. After starting the season 5-4, it looked like the Kings were heading in the right direction, and they went on to lose, I believe, 5 of the next 6, and they just have not looked good since then. And because of that, ownership decided it's time to pull the plug on him, and it's led to other parts or other executives in the league to question why was this decision not made in the offseason rather than go in 16 games, 17 games in and pull him. So first, Brian, what do you think about the firing, and then we'll go from there.
So the firing, like we talked about in the past, definitely just due. This man should have been fired a long time ago. What I have heard, I'm not exactly sure if it's 100% positive or correct, is that the Kings did not actually want to fire Luke Walton because they didn't want to be paying 2 coaches at once. So if they fire him, they're still going to have to pay Luke Walton, and they did not want to do that. But it just seems like So far, the season's not going their way. It's still a mess. Might as well just do it now rather than later. Now, Marvin Bagley probably over there dancing. We've talked about Marvin Bagley a million times, and his struggles with minutes and all that. I'm sure he still wants to trade, but it's Luke Walton definitely was his time. He actually has a record in his 2 seasons and a little bit and plus. His record is 68 and 93. And what I actually did find interesting was that over 18 coaches since Luke Walton's been hired, Luke Walton is actually the second highest winning percentage for Sacramento coaches. So he has a 42% winning percentage with throughout his tenure of the team, and he's the second highest winning percentage as a coach out of 18 coaches since the franchise moved to California in 1985. That is just mind blowing. So Luke Walton definitely a problem, but it seems like Sacramento has some bigger problems going on.
There's definitely a lot of fish to fry in this situation, and you kind of have to go all the way upstairs in the front office and start asking questions. What's happening there that's causing for them to be perpetually going through these type of situations? Early on in our podcasting career, we spoke about the Pelicans and how upstairs is the problem rather than what's happening on the court. I'm a firm believer that a lot of the decisions that are made in the front court that happen on the court is a residual effect of decisions that are being made in the front office. So with that in mind, since since our owner Vivek Adanaviv became owner in like 2013, I believe Shaq had a little stake in that during that time as well. He's been very adamant about wanting to build a playoff winning team. The Bleacher put out a report just doing like a little bit into the insides of what's going on with this situation, where Jake Fisher wrote this report going in depth about the whole firing, and then just giving us an insight into what's really going on for the Kings organization and why they are perpetually always bottom dwellers. And it's glaring to see that no matter if you change the general manager, which was Vlade Divac for some time before they switched their general managers last year, you're still seeing the same issues. And I was watching earlier this week also as they introduced Alvin Gentry into the head coaching role. They started to ask, what is he going to do to change the culture and change the fact that they haven't had a winning season in over 15 years. And Alvin Gentry, I think, answered it in the best way possible. It's not fair to put that on the players that are currently on that team, and it's not fair to weigh that over him as well, because we've only been here potentially most of the people that are part of the organization at this point have only been here for 2 to 3 years. So we really cannot be at fault for this. The thing is also that he mentioned is for you to think that I'm going to come into this seat and ultimately immediately it's going to turn into a different culture is not fair as well. And I think he was right on the money when he was saying that. It's about collectively and slowly working yourself into a point where you're getting into now we're getting respectable. Now we're a more respected franchise. Now we could consider how we're going to win, which ways we want to win, and which type of players we want to put in. But first they have to get off the bottom floor and get to being a respectable organization. At this point, they're not, and people treat them as that.
Yeah, it's just they have such a history of losing, and I completely agree. Just like what you mentioned about the top level is the biggest point right now, because like those people need to get fixed before anything else gets fixed. Because I just went through this as a Knicks fan of seeing when your management has no idea what they're doing. Doesn't matter who you sign, doesn't really matter what players you get. They're just gonna make bad decisions always going forward, which is just gonna hinder the team. If your front office isn't making smart decisions, your team is just not gonna progress the way that they need to. So I love that Alvin Gentry is kind of setting the expectations appropriately and where they need to be, which is low, because this is gonna take a lot of time for this team. This team actually has some solid young pieces. They have Buddy Hield, they have Rashawn Holmes, who they signed to a really good contract. Buddy Hield, which is probably a pretty good trade chip that they have. Um, you have Davion Mitchell. You have blanking on the player that they had from last season, the rookie Tyrese Halliburton. Like they have like some legit talent over there. Potentially Marvin Bagley, whatever they do with him. It's just that as of right now, things are not going as they're supposed to. So, I mean, is Alvin Gentry the guy? I mean, looking at his history over his career as a head coach, his record is 510 and 595. So also not a winning coach. But he's been fired from plenty of jobs, and he was actually the coach of the Pelicans from 2015 to 2020. So this guy actually has a lot of experience. He could potentially, start moving this team in the correct direction. I mean, they just got a win over Portland, who's also been kind of middle of the road so far, but it's at least they're finally doing something to move in the right direction. Is this
Yep.
is this what they 100% need? Is Alvin Gentry going to be their head coach for the next 5 years? No. Are most of these players going to be here over the next 5 years? Probably not. But, it's all about just making that little progression little by little, and we'll see how they do.
And then another interesting thing that I saw from that interview when they brought in Alvin Gentry, this is about the third or fourth time that Alvin Gentry has had to take over after losing the head coach midway through the season. And he was asked that question as well. And he seemed as if he was mentioning that it's not a good field to have that, obviously.
Yeah.
But he's here to support the Kings and make sure that they get to where they need to be. But like I said, and much like you were mentioning as well, it's about removing those malignant forces first. And then once you're purified of all of that, you can now start thinking about how we can improve this team, because nothing's going to happen if you still have the same forces that were making bad decisions previously currently still making decisions, because it's easy to get rid of Vladdy Divac, but if you still have the same VP of basketball operations that's still making bad decisions up top, it's not going to matter.
Yeah. I find that pretty funny that Alvin Gentry, this is not his first time taking over a head coaching position like this. And I mean, if anything, he's actually probably one of the better people to actually take over the job, because he has that experience, and I'm sure he's done things that he regrets in the past, and I'm sure he's learned from them and what he could implement this time around. So that's definitely nice. It's not like a guy doing this for the first time and just kind of going in blind. What I did kind of find interesting of like how bad the Sacramento Kings have actually been so far. They were 16th in offense, so middle of the road offense. And as we see, like they have some decent players. They need more, but not actually terrible there. Where they were terrible though, they were ranked 24th in defense, and that's where it is of like we saw before in the past with other teams. It's a lot of effort and it's a lot of buying into the coaching, and so that's something that can change when you have a culture change. Offense, not too far off. Change a few things, get some new players in there. So they're not in the grimmest of positions, but we'll see how they do. Definitely a good step getting rid of Luke Walton.
Exactly. And then another thing to add, and this is another clear upstairs issue that I'm having, is that as we're having this conversation, I'm remembering all of these things bubble up to the surface. Is I remember that that there was reports that the owner's son, who does not have a background in the NBA, was trying to influence decision making on the team as well. You look at like even the firing of Vladdy Divac. Vladdy Divac signed an extension a year before that. So why would you sign?
Yeah.
Why would you provide him with an extension if you were going to fire him less than a year? So you got to have, when you see those type of things happening, it becomes things that you could circle in and realize, like, to pinpoint where's the true issue happening here. Obviously, you can't fire your owner, but you're gonna have to find a way to. And trust me, we've seen that with the Knicks. They've tried. Their fans have tried to fire their owner, but you're gonna have to find a way where they have a clear chain of command, and like decision making powers really is given to the people that should be making basketball decisions on this team.
That is so concerning that he gives that position and his son is trying to make decisions on the team. That is not the person you want to do. That is not how you run an organization. That is just not the things that you're supposed to do. And like you mentioned, we see with the Knicks, James Dolan comes in every once in a while now and tries to make a decision, and it goes terribly wrong. You pay your front office so much money so they can make the correct decision. Why would you ever have your son try to make decisions for the team? That is so bad. I really feel sorry for Kings fans. Hopefully, the owner wises up and realizes I should not be meddling into what actually happens with the team, or at least having more discussions with his front office and letting them do their job. So that's crazy news. Wow.
All right, then that leads us into a more, as we're ending this Thanksgiving weekend, heading into this Thanksgiving weekend, but we just ended Thanksgiving, a little bit more lighthearted conversation right here with Giannis has just recently discovered a great American tradition, American pastime, in Oreos and milk. And he actually had like a 2-minute dialogue after a game explaining how amazing it's been. It's just, we're joking about it. It's pretty funny, but I think people would actually honestly pay to see the process of Giannis becoming Americanized. And, obviously he's been in the league for, I think, over 7-8 years now. There's still some parts that isn't 100% Americanized yet. And it's funny to see that Oreos is one of those things. Brian, do you think, and I had a question with this is, Brian, do you think that Giannis has a career after the league in being like a reactions guy to American culture, American pop culture after this?
I think if he wants to, 100%. This guy has charisma on charisma. He is just a great big child. I mean, he's still a young guy, to be frank, but like he is just so charismatic. Everyone, you see him just interact in the real world, and it's like, wow, this guy is hilarious. He's just he's amazing. The interaction you're saying, the little clip that came out of like Oreos, and he even talked about it at first of like, when I first came to America, I always knew I wanted Oreos. As a kid, I was too poor to even have Oreos, and I would dream of it. And when I got to America for a month, I ate nothing but Oreos, and then I got sick of them. And then I never touched it again. And then the kid is telling him to dunk his Oreos into the milk, and what he does is actually just grabs the Oreos and throws them inside the entire glass of milk. And then he grabs it anyway. He's like, don't worry. I can eat it still. And it just blows his mind. And like the fact that he even has the charisma to on an interview talk about this and speak about this, because I feel like most people, I don't know, if I had this interaction, I don't think I would be like in a press conference just bring it up and like start telling this 2-minute long story about Oreos, because it's not something that like it's something I take for granted. I take for granted the deliciousness of Oreos and milk. But Giannis, he's just him, that transition to becoming Americanized is just amazing. He definitely has a future in movies. He's amazing. Did you also actually see? It was pretty funny. I think a couple weeks ago, it was like a Snapchat of like Giannis, and he's like wearing a mask. He's like, "Oh my god, no one recognizes me at the 7-Eleven right now." Meanwhile, the meme is like, "Oh yeah, let me look at this 7-foot tall Greek guy right in front of me. Yeah, let me not. Oh, that's just a normal guy here." Like, Giannis is something else, man.
No, that was hilarious too, and that's what was leading me to why I asked that question too. Is like just seeing him like interact with these things that we always take for granted, being raised in this country or living in this country long enough that you don't remember a life without it. All of these things that he doesn't take for granted, and it seems like such childlike reactions and like enjoyment too, but like it truly is just someone that is truly trying to thoroughly enjoy a new culture. And as much as I may hate the guy on the court, like the guy's honestly a funny character that I think not character, but a funny person beyond the court, and definitely a personality that you want to get to know, and you want to see him go through his trials and tribulations of understanding the American culture and telling us what doesn't make sense and what does make sense about it and stuff like that. And it even remembering like after the parade when he went and he got Chick-fil-A's and he got his nuggets and everything, like those things, it just makes you laugh. The guy's a funny guy.
And the guy is an extremely nice guy. It's that's the thing. It's hard to root against him. Like you're saying, like you want to hate him as a Nets fan, like everything that happened these last playoffs and just how he plays in general. But he's just he comes from humble beginnings and he talks about it, and he's such like a family guy. That's the biggest thing. There's actually a book that came out, I think this last summer, about Giannis and his upbringing. And I heard the author of this book, I suggest everyone to go look it up and read it. I'm going to read it soon because it's actually very interesting. But she was talking about like every single time. Well, at first, she wanted to do a book on Giannis's brother, Alex. And just literally that how close that entire family was and is like blew her mind. So she had to switch the book and do it over Giannis. And it's just this guy is such a hardworking guy. For him, family first over everything. And you just see his relationship even with Thanasis on the Bucks as well. Just like those two together, you can tell they love playing together. It's a great family dynamic. This guy is hilarious. He's not quite on Shaq level. Shaq is like legendary in terms of the things he did outside of basketball, but I could see, Giannis getting pretty close to there. I can see him being in movies one day.
I could see that as well.
All right. Do you want to call it a show?
I think we are.
Is there anything you want to say before we finish?
Guess it's time to give my not weekly, but every now and then I'm gonna give a little bit of a Nets report on this, and I'm gonna say, you know what, I had a lot of doubters. Was watching NBA on ESPN Wednesday. I'm watching Jalen Rose give out the story about the Nets playing in the New York bars. They're still watching Knicks replays as the Nets are playing. Hey man, The Nets are not looking to take over New York City. The Knicks can have that. I'm happy if they have it. I'm happy for them to have it. I want a chip, man. and I think that's the collective around all Nets fans, around all the whole Nets stratosphere and organization, is that we want to win a ring. It might be really hard this year, but the team is rounding out pretty well, even without Kyrie on the court currently. And, we talked about the net rating and where the Nets are sitting. I'm loving the defensive side of the ball that they have this year over last year, and an emphasis on doing that. And also their offense is coming into shape as the season grows as well. So that's a little bit of my Nets report just thrown in there.
I like it. I mean, so you said everything right. Like as a Knicks fan, it's like it's nice to have like New York support and everything, but like you say, the only thing that matters, the only thing we play for is a championship. And the Nets are so close. They're right there. They pretty much have everything they need. But hopefully Kyrie comes back. We'll see as that's how that story progresses. But so far, we should actually talk about this in a future podcast. We talked about today. Sorry, you go.
Kyrie should lay off the touch football and come back to basketball.
Touch football. I love that. But what I was gonna say, like, we should talk about because we talked about today, the Suns. Are people sleeping on the Suns? We should really talk about, are people sleeping on Kevin Durant? The season that Kevin Durant has been having. No one's talking about it. What people are talking about is Kevin Durant's ashy ankles and which that picture was pretty wild. But like that's just it's so insane that the season that Kevin Durant is having so far. That has to be a topic for the future.
Definitely, and we'll have some time to talk about the ashy ankles as well.
Yeah, exactly. We'll sprinkle some of that in there. But as I say every week to all the listeners, be sure Jeff is still killing it on Twitter. Oh my goodness, the things that he tweets out there, reposts, and if you follow it, I am sure, I'll give you 100% guarantee, a Charles Barkley guarantee. You will love that Twitter account. So be sure to follow For the Love of the Game Pod on Twitter. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, everywhere. Leave us a rating. It really helps. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode so far. And we're only trying to get better going forward. We're pushing through no matter what happens. And this has been a good one.
Thankful for all of our listeners.
Yes, thankful for all the listeners. All right, everyone. That is episode 10.
Peace.